This is Andre Chardin of the Crew Process and the EagleSoft Field Guide on Facebook. You are listening to #POD, Podcast of Dentistry with Dr. Panks.
podcastofdentistry.com/squadcast. I believe everyone has a story to tell. And if you want to start a podcast to tell your story, the easiest way to start one is Squadcast. No special hardwares, no special softwares needed for you or your guests. You simply start podcasting using any laptop or desktop or Android phone and even a Chromebook in a browser like Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Brave. So, you may ask, how do you do it? Well, it's simple. As a host, you simply schedule an interview on your dashboard. Share that particular link to the guest and hit record to get studio quality audio. Done. Simple. No sign-ups needed by your guests, no special mics needed by anyone, and still get studio quality audio. There can be up to 4 people at one time, including the host. You can even see the video of your guests. Connect any earphone or headphones with mic and you're golden. When you're done, simply stop recording and everything with separate tracks is automatically uploaded on your dashboard, ready to download in no time. Most of the basic audio editing is also automatically done when you download. Well, guess what? This particular podcast was recorded on Squadcast. Do I not make any sense? Well, they do have demo videos on their website to show you exactly how it is done. I did use the support and they have best in the class support. They are so confident in their services that they have even compared their services with other competitors. Another thing that gives me peace of mind is redundancy. That means that even if there is some error, you can still get the backup of all the recordings sent to you in your email through your dashboard. So, if you really like the idea of starting your own podcast, podcastofdentistry.com/squadcast. The subscription starts only at $10 per month. You can cancel anytime through your account without making any calls or any change of emails. Super easy. Once again, to support this show, simply go to podcastofdentistry.com/squadcast. Give it a try. Thank you for finding time and listening to #POD, Podcast of Dentistry. You could have spent hours watching or listening to HBO or Netflix, and it is indeed an honor that you decided to spend time with our podcast. Today, we have very wide-ranging conversations with a very humble and a reflecting speaker, Dr. Jason Luchtefeld. Dr. Jason is a COO and a Senior Vice President of Inspero at InsperoTeam.com. Inspero is a distinctive community of impact creators and conscious leaders which aim to breathe hope in dentistry. He also has a practice in Illinois which has a very unique team and a setup. I would say that setup seems like a dream setup in terms of balancing life and dentistry. Many of you might even be attracted to set up your office that way. Of course, we discuss all that in the podcast. This podcast will touch you at so many levels that you will be surprised. We talk about business, growth, leadership, health, and above all, reflecting some core values and vision. This podcast will force you to think and reflect what you are, who you are, what do you want out of life, and how to be fulfilled not only financially but also emotionally. We talked about health and how to handle stresses in dentistry and life, both physical and mental. We also talked about some vain stuff like shoes and whiskey on one hand, and on the other hand, we talked about how to achieve goals in life. There are so many books and nuggets sprinkled in the podcast that you will be compelled to make notes of them. I certainly have made notes with a lot of homework to do. The podcast does start a tad slow since we are setting up the foundation, but please keep patience and you will not be disappointed. So without further ado, Dr. Jason Luchtefeld. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the invite.
So you're practicing in Robinson, Illinois, right?
That's right.
So tell me about your dentistry. What kind of dentistry you do, and
Sure. So Robinson is a small town in southeast Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
Nearest big city is probably 2 hours away. That would be Indianapolis, Indiana.
Okay.
So it's a small town that allows me to do a real nice mix of comprehensive dentistry. So
Right.
We see kids. We try to do work on kids of all kinds. We see adults for normal bread and butter dentistry. I place implants and restore implants, a lot of dentures, partials. Really, it's a great mix. Orthodontics, the guy I bought the practice from 10 years ago has been doing orthodontics in town of all kinds since like 1980.
Wow.
So he's got quite a pool of patients or I guess people in the community that know that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do see quite a bit of orthodontia in the practice,
Okay.
from early intervention stuff with expanders and different things. That allows me to do all that stuff as well. So I
Got
have
it.
people in braces, people in expanders, some full arch stuff. That's rare, but do get the odd big case. That's a lot of fun. So yeah, a broad mix, comprehensive family dentistry.
So do you do your own ortho, or the doctor or the dentist you bought the practice from does it?
No, I do it. He still does Invisalign in the practice.
Okay.
I don't do that, and I have no intention in getting certified for that. I'm not a big fan of it. So
Okay.
I let him do that and refer all the Invisalign to him. And then I handle the straight wire and appliances and things like that.
Oh, so I saw that you do myofunctional therapy for the kids too. How often do you do that in your practice?
That's been something we've experimented off and on with since probably 2011.
Okay.
And it has really been hit and miss. If you can get a kid that is compliant, then it's a really nice early intervention, non-invasive treatment. But
Okay.
that's just it. Compliance is the gigantic elephant in the room. And so I probably have only two kids right now with those appliances, and both are not going well because they're not wearing them.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that I think has a lot of potential, but is much more of a nightmare to implement than what the salespeople let on.
Yeah, I got it. So I think I say the same thing about Invisalign to my patients. It's like, don't spend any money, man. Lady, don't spend any money on Invisalign if you don't think you can wear it like 20, 22 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's better you keep it that way, or worst case scenario, I just fix your. I'll be an interior dentist. You see what I'm saying? 6 through 11.
Yeah.
I'll do
That's
the
right.
veneers for you and be done with it.
Yeah.
You'll be happy. I'll be happy, So that's the reason I was asking you what kind of dentistry you do, because I was very interested to know about myofunctional therapy. But as you said, the elephant in the room is, compliance. It's hard.
Yes.
Now, you do sleep apnea too. Do you?
Sort of. Yeah.
Sort of.
So I'm pretty strict on when I will do something for somebody with S.
Okay.
So this goes back to my training from like Barry Glassman and Steve Bender, some guys that are pretty aggressive with their prevention of inserting any appliance on anybody.
Okay.
They advocate, at least they did when I took the training from them. They advocate for appropriate testing and then appropriate appliance or referral. So what I do is I screen people with a pulse ox that they wear overnight, at least 2 nights. We get a report from that. It's a Nonin. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Nonin or Nonin, Nonin pulse ox.
Okay.
Yeah. So nice little finger thing, snaps on their wrist, and relatively comfortable, easy to wear, it's dummy proof, so it's is really important.
Yeah.
And so they wear that. If they look good, meaning oxygen's good, heart rate's good, and because typically they're coming to me because of snoring, not because of sleep apnea.
Right.
So I then will make a sleep apnea appliance, something relatively inexpensive. I use John's Dental Lab in Terre Haute, Indiana, and they've got a few different styles, and so I do that. If they have sleep apnea, if they come back and their report does not look good, then I will not make them appliance until they go have a sleep study.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so if they go have a sleep study, then they're oftentimes getting a CPAP first or an APAP. And that I've only had 2 people that have come back and said they also want an appliance.
Oh, okay.
So I do a lot less sleep apnea than I thought I would, considering the area. Although with being that strict about it, I may be kind of forcing myself to do a whole lot less than I could if I just really promoted it and did it on anybody that had a certain stop bang score or F4 score, for example. So I really limit it.
Okay. Got it. So basically you would do that pulse ox test, and if those pulse ox test looks within normal limits, you're okay to give them an appliance. That's right. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
Otherwise you go or do the CPAP test and sleep apnea test and take it from there. Got it.
That's right.
So and I heard as you said you do some implants too. Do you do guided implants? Where what kind of?
Yeah. This is an interesting conversation, and so I'm a dinosaur when it comes to implants.
Okay.
Meaning that I don't do them guided, and I don't do CT scans. Don't do cone beams, and so I don't really speak out a lot anymore about my implant placements. I used to, like back in the day, in like 2001 to 2005 or 6 or 7, I was posting all kinds of cases on Dentaltown of implant stuff that I was doing. Some just straightforward, some crazy stuff that I would try.
Yeah.
And so as things went more and more to the guided world and stuff, I just, with where I'm at the time, it wasn't making sense for me to get into that. Now, in retrospect, I was dumb in that decision, but that's what it is. So now I rely on just my surgical experience and knowledge and let people know that it's possible that we'll get in there and need to do something, and I'm prepared to do that. I'm prepared to adjust on the fly as needed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things too, I guess what I could advocate for is, even if you grow up with a cone beam, you can't rely on that 100%. You have to still be able to go in and have the skills when you realize that for some reason you ran into something you didn't know you were going to run into, or your guide doesn't fit exactly like you thought it was going to, or whatever.
Right.
You can't just, well, I guess you can. What you need to do is just stop if you're not ready for it.
Yeah.
Close things up and then come back later. But it helps a lot to have the surgical skill and experience to adjust on the fly and still get a really nice result.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with that. I think it just gives you an extra layer of protection. So, but otherwise you still have to have that basic knowledge to adjust to get where you want to be.
That's right.
Want to be. Yeah, I completely agree with that.
Yeah. So I love the stuff that is happening now, though. With like Danny Doming and Corey Glenn and August De Oliveira and some of these guys that are just really pushing the envelope and doing amazing things. And I salivate at what they're doing. It's so cool and exciting. And yet I'm at a point where I don't know that I want to go down the road that's necessary to get to that level. And so I do kind of now cherry pick stuff more than I used to.
Got it.
And I don't, I'm not living out there on the edge like I was 10 years ago.
Well, I think one thing I loved about your website, your office website, was your hours. Great hours, man. At least you were like 12:30 in the morning. No, until 12:30. Only starting at 7:30 in the morning until 12:30, and then starting late and then finishing. How'd you get that idea? Like,
yeah, so there's a story behind that.
Sure.
And it's good. This is a long form podcast.
Yeah. Take your time, man. Take your time.
So the practice historically was open from 8:30 to 5 every day, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And it was that way for like 40 years or 36 years or something. So
yeah,
I came in and did the same thing. I just, the previous owner and we both worked full time when I first came on. We did that for a couple of years, and then he started cutting back. And as he did, we still were able to cover the office 5 days a week, even though neither one of us really worked 5 days per week very often. Occasionally I would. If I went on vacation, for example, for a week, then I would work 5 days the week before and 5 days the week after to kind of make up for those days off.
Yeah. Okay.
So we in 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, things were going downhill. Business was dropping and insurance was really the word of the day, and we were not in network. And so we were really taking a hit from that, and it just kept going and going. And I said, wow, I have to do something different.
Yeah.
I have to, I had a decision to make. Do I really go head first into marketing, promoting how we're different, what we do, what we offer that's unique, or do I jump into the insurance world? And so it really turned into two things. One, kind of a recommitment to the things that I wanted us to stand for. Mm-hmm. And number two, having to cut overhead. Right. So looking at, okay, how do I cut expenses? Because right now I'm operating at my overhead was at 80% in 2015, I think it was. So that was not sustainable. So the good news was that I paid my practice off in 2014, I think it was, maybe 2015.
Okay.
And so I didn't have debt on the practice. Okay. So that created so much freedom for me to make choices that were ideal for me and the practice. So I had a real heart-to-heart with my staff and said, hey, look, here's the reality of the situation, and we need to do something different. Okay. And so one of the things is that right now, my staff number was at 37 or 38% of overhead. Okay. So, I mean, that's really pretty high, especially for this area. So I didn't want to have to let anybody go. So I came up with this idea about the hours and said, I kind of threw it out to them. We have two choices. We need to cut back the hours because we need to be busier when we're here. We have way too many gaps. Right. And so we can do that 3 days of work. So I have a good friend in Kansas City that I used to do a podcast with. Yeah. Grant Ritchie. He's a dentist in Kansas City, roughly Kansas City. And he only works 3 days a week, but 10-hour days. Yeah. And so I was like, well, 10-hour days is long. That would be brutal. But he loved it, just spoke really highly of it. And then he had that every other week. He had this monster weekend. Right. It's like, man, that sounds awesome. So I went to the staff, said, hey, what do you think about this idea? And they were like, we have kids. 10-hour days would be brutal for us to try to drop kids off, pick kids up, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, well, if we can't do that, then we need to do something that we can appeal to more people. And so some people like early mornings, some people like lunch hours, and some people like evenings. And with our current hours of 8:30 to 5, we had lunch from 12 to 1. we were like, nobody wanted to come see us because we were like middle of the day for everybody. So that's how I said, okay, well, let's break it up. Let's do early one day. So that's where the 7:30 to 12:30 came in. And it tends to be 7:30 to 1.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then the 12:30 to 6 came in, so that we are covering a little bit earlier in the morning for people. And we have a little bit of time at lunch hours.
Yeah.
And we have an extra hour in the evenings. And I'll tell you what, even though people were really confused at first, we had a lot of people that were like trying to call, and they would show up and the doors locked and they were complaining. And we were like, no, wait, here's the deal. We now have these better hours for you.
Yeah.
So now I love it. And the staff loves it. I couldn't believe it. Now I try to get them to work more, and they're like, well, we don't want it. We like this. Like, they get afternoons with their kids. They get all this extra time, even though they're, to be honest, they are making less money.
Yes.
But we've now grown more than 20% the last 2 years. And so they've gotten monster bonuses for 2 years. And so now it's just, we're done differently. And I'll tell you, I would not go back to those old hours.
I like it.
I love it.
I like it.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, I really loved it. I'm glad I stumbled upon your website. You remind me, I interviewed Dr. Kaner Shah recently, almost like 3 weeks ago.
Yep.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they're off. And what about you? Do you work on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or only Friday?
No, so the intention behind my hours is that I would do Monday through Thursday 1 week, and then Tuesday through Friday the next week. And then I have a 4-day weekend every other week.
That's
so nice. That gets screwed up whenever I have travel, and I now have a ton of travel. So now that it rarely happens that way, because I add in days in order to make up for the travel days. So
right.
It's really pretty random. I don't have any kind of set.
Yeah. So you said you reduced down their hours, but they were happy, because now they can spend more time. I'm talking about your staff. They spend time with your with the kids and family and whatnot, and that's beautiful. I think I was talking to Grace from Marketing from Grace, and she said, I said, how do you retain an employee? This is on the same track. They won't go anywhere. Now your staff is not going to go anywhere because they're spoiled by your hours, if nothing else, right? So,
yeah.
Now, and you grew 20% year to year for last year. That's huge, because we grew close to 15% this year, and that too with a lot of plus minuses. That's another topic, but 20% is a good number. Any businessman who's in dentistry would understand and respect 20%, a good number.
Yeah.
How did you, define bonus for your staff at that stage? When their total hours, were actually reduced monthly, basically.
Yeah. So I'm going to back up for just a second and tell you that I think one of the reasons that they were so open to this change was the transparency that I brought to the conversation. So I went to them and said, and showed them the numbers, said, here are the numbers from 2013, 2014, 2015. And so they could see the trends for themselves. And I showed them the overhead, and I was very transparent about all of that stuff, and said, look, I really want to do the right thing here. And they all understood, they all appreciated. And actually, I even opened it up, said, hey, how many of you want to just go in network? Go in network. We would be flooded with patients, but we would be in network. And so you're going to have some issues there with fees being reduced and all that. So, and not all of them said no. So, it was a group decision, a group sacrifice, so to speak. Yeah. They appreciated that I had been sacrificing for a couple of years, as things were dropping and still paying the bills and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so now they respected and appreciated what was done and why it was done.
Right.
And so I think that's an important piece of that, because it's not like I just went in and said, hey, we're cutting hours.
Right. No.
Deal with it.
Yeah.
It was done in a respectful way. So that's that piece of it. Now, the next thing is the bonus that you asked. So what we did was we said, okay, we want to set a goal of production, roughly, collections actually, per month that will be acceptable for, I think it was 2016. And so if we hit that, then whatever we go above that, I'll divide 20% of it into bonuses.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So for example, if the goal was 60,000 a month and we averaged 66,000 a month, then that was what?
6,000
$72,000 in a year.
Right.
That was above.
Yes.
So 20% of that is 14,000 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I divided that amount between them.
Oh.
So they got that was 2018. They got a big bonus. They're going to get a bigger bonus this year. They don't know that yet, so don't let them listen. But yeah, and then it went up every year. So I think we set a 5% increase per year. So we started out at, it's only like 65,000 a month for the office. And then that gets bumped 5% a year. So this year, I think the goal was like 72 or 74, somewhere in that range. So anyway,
okay. So wait a minute. So how did you set up the baseline from 60 to 65, 65 to 72 or 74?
Yeah. Well, that goes back to that very first year when things were miserable for me, stressful, paying the bills and seeing overhead skyrocket and knowing I had to do something. And I said, okay, here are my payments. So I had a basically bare ass minimum that I had to hit. And I had an amount that I would have liked to make. I would like to make as my take home. And so that is how I came up with that very first number. And I knew what I wanted my overhead percentages to be roughly. And that's from national averages plus discussions with my accountant on what my practice is doing. So I kind of have a pros heavy practice. So my lab bill is higher than normal, for example.
Yes.
Anyway, that's how we kind of formulated that first number. And then growing from there is based on how much do we want to get busier, raise prices, increase hourly pay, that kind of stuff. And that has to do with where we're at currently. So for example, the first year we did it, we changed hours. We felt busier, but we still weren't fully utilizing the schedule.
Right.
So there was room to grow just within that schedule. Now we're at a point where we're close to maxing out that schedule. So there are a lot of Tuesdays, for example, that I will do a big case in the afternoon.
Okay. Got it.
Even I don't normally work a Tuesday afternoon, but if somebody wants to have their upper arch reconstructed, I'll come in and pull some teeth and place 5 implants and, do that kind of stuff where it's just me and my assistant.
No extra,
really
other extra overheads. Now, do you give the bonus at the end of the year, every month, every 6 months, quarterly,
Yeah, that first year I did it on a quarterly basis. And that was okay, but man, we have crazy fluctuations.
Sure.
And so a lot of that is some weird dynamic that I can't figure out. Part of it is my travel schedule, meeting schedule, that kind of thing. And so, for example, we might do 110,000 in January and do 62,000 in February.
Right.
And so it's rocking, it's roller coaster enough that quarterly thing didn't
give them
work
enough
out very well.
Give them enough push. Okay.
Yeah. And to be honest, to be fair to my team, like they are not motivated by money. Like we have tried to do the whole grab bag thing. Like if you do this amount of production today, then tomorrow you get to pull from a bag.
Wow.
And you can get anywhere from $10 to $100. We've done monthly things. We've done rolling quarterly things. And none of that has made a lick of difference in our production, scheduling, anything. And some of it taught some awareness.
Yes.
So, I think to some degree, there is that benefit. So, for example, a daily grab bag, it teaches them to pay attention to the schedule, and if something cancels, to fill it with something productive, not a denture adjustment.
Right.
So it does start to create a mindset of filling for appropriate time. But other than that, like they were not motivated by money. So that is a real credit to them. So back to the original question, I found that ultimately the end of the year creates a much bigger wow factor.
Right.
So being able to give them a $1,500 bonus at the end of the year,
right,
instead of like $100
sure
this quarter, $200 that quarter. Even though at the end of the year it's the same number, there's something about an envelope that has those green rectangles in it that just really makes people smile.
Got it. So in our same example, if and you're based everything on collections, you're not doing it on production. The bonus
That's right.
structure. So that obviously makes sense.
That's right.
So in the same example, if you jumped 20% from 50,000 to 60,000 a year, like monthly basis, so you're making 10 grand extra every year, so 120,000 a year. Off that 120,000, you're giving 20% to between all the staff members, right?
That's right.
So that'll become, in this example, would be 24,000, and that you're splitting that between how many staff members?
9.
9, and you're paying something extra to the hygienist, or you're paying something extra to the assistant. How are you differentiating or managing?
Yes. So I look at the number of hours they worked. So that acts as a baseline.
Okay.
So, for example, there is no like set formula here.
Sure.
It's a little bit of just mental gymnastics that I do with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say I have 20 grand that I want a bonus.
Yeah.
And I have 10 people. The person that worked the most hours worked, let's say 1,000 hours.
Okay.
So I might say, okay, that's the baseline.
Yeah, everybody who worked less. Yeah,
$1,000. If you work 900 hours, you're going to get $900 as your baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's going to take up whatever it is, half the money. The other half, I'm going to kind of divvy out based on what I've experienced from the different team members through the year. So if people really went above and beyond, put in extra time, helped to clean the office, made extra phone calls to patients, different stuff like that, then I'm going to bump theirs up.
Okay.
But they're not going to go below that baseline that is based on their number of hours.
Got it. That makes sense. And now, obviously, I don't know if that happens, but this is human nature, right? People would talk. How much did you get? How much I got?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And could that create, in your experience, some animosity or something on those lines? Or I don't like her.
It could.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty transparent. I say, look, this is based initially on your number of hours worked.
Okay.
So people that work more hours are going to get more money. And then secondarily, it's based on what you've done extra for the office. And so
but that's subjective. But that is subjective.
Yeah, it is subjective to me. And
I
say it's what I see. What I see is what you get.
Yeah.
So So, and I also tell them, like, it's not real smart to go comparing your envelopes with each other.
Right.
But if you decide to, then just realize that this is based on this criteria, some of which is objective, some is subjective, and whatever you want to do with that. Now, with that said, again, a credit to my team, I've never heard bickering or complaining or whining about, oh, this person got more than this person or anything like that. And maybe I just don't hear it. maybe it's how I'm approaching it. Maybe it's just that they're awesome people.
Yes.
And that they appreciate what they're getting, but they haven't complained. And if I had somebody that was complaining about that, then I would have a talk with them.
Fair enough. Well, seems like you travel a lot. We've been talking and going back and forth in this conversation. Now, do you like to travel for fun or CE courses or mix or what? Most of the time.
These days it is mostly work related. By work related, I mean either CE or as part of the secondary business that I'm now involved with.
Yes.
And so those two things take up the majority, and then thrown in there, twice a year maybe is travel for just fun.
Got it. So, so most of the time it's because of the business. So are we talking about Inspero here?
That's right.
Okay. So why not we get into Inspero then?
Sure.
Right.
Let's do.
I actually went to the website, but essentially loved the definition of leadership there.
Great.
I don't know if it's your own or, but I loved it. It said capacity to translate vision into reality. Mm-hmm. It was a beautiful definition. It's like very succinct. How do you define vision for you yourself personally? And then we'll go to vision for your company.
Yeah. Vision is similar to leadership in that it is the ability to know yourself in a way that allows you to determine where you want to be in the future. So that's having a clarity of your core values, how you want to live your life, and being able to then act on that. So from a personal standpoint, that is typically not just a solo effort for people.
Sure.
So it includes a significant other, and therefore you have two independent visions of the future.
Right.
And then you have a joint vision of the future.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then to me, that has to fit intimately with a vision of the business. And I think the business needs to be somewhat of a reflection of the person that owns and or leads it. So that's partly in how the core values are reflected in the actions of that person and that business. And that's partly then what that business is doing. So just because I'm a dentist, it's what am I doing for my patients? How am I presenting dentistry to my patients? What kind of dentistry am I doing? What kind of relationships am I forming with my patients or not? Mm-hmm. And so all of that is wrapped up in having a vision that is acted upon.
Right. So there are 2 or 3 keywords here: vision, core values. Some of the core values we are, I think that's my understanding. I'm not an expert, but some of the core values you're just born with, that's your personality. That's my understanding. Some of the core values you develop when you're growing up with your family, your parents and whatnot, right? Your exposure to environment and whatnot. What are the other core values that you can develop and you might have developed over the last 10 years, 15 years before Inspero was born. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You see where I'm going? Okay.
So I think if I go on a long rant here and I don't answer or address the comment, then just rephrase it.
I'll kind of bring you back. Don't worry.
Okay. So first is a difference between core values and values.
Right.
So core values are going to be limited to 3 to 5 typically in number. Values could be more than that. You can have things that you value, or you have values that you want to portray. And those can be 10, 20, depending on the person. That core value thing, though, is something that is, some people say, some researchers, maybe psychologists, I'm not sure which, maybe both, say is that you do form some of those by the age of 3.
Right.
And I don't know enough about the research to be able to really dispute that. Although I think that there's, like you were saying, there's a lot that goes into how that's formed when you're a kid, and how that develops as you age and what you learn, and turns into something that you're able to have the self-awareness to evaluate what your core values are.
Right.
So core values need to be personal, deeply held, acted upon, and prized. And so if you don't do those things with them, they're not a core value.
Got it.
So a lot of time that's a big mistake that people make, is they'll do a core values list and they'll pick out their top 10, then they'll narrow it down to 7, and they'll narrow it down to 5. They're like, okay, these are my 5. And then you say, okay, are you doing that every day?
Right.
Are you sharing across the world that these are your core values and these are the things you do? If not, then they're not your core values. And so you kind of then have to look at what you're doing with your life. And if your life is portraying that it's something completely different, then you need to reevaluate and maybe take a workshop on emotional intelligence or something.
Right.
So that was a plug. So then we so how has that changed, you asked, over the last 10 to 15 years? So that's right?
Yeah.
That's what you asked?
Yeah.
So it has, I don't think it has changed in action. It has changed in awareness. So I've become more aware of what it means to live through core values, and have realized that there was a lot of things I was doing that were congruent with what I perceived as my core values. And there were some things that I was doing that weren't. And that became something, okay, is that what I want to be, or is this? And that forced a change in me, a change in action, I should say, in how I show up at my office, for example, and how I interact with my team and how I interact with patients, and being more there for them rather than that being a place I go do dentistry.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I think I answered.
Yes. No. You're right on track. Now, obviously, younger dentists who are coming out, they're younger. I mean, obviously you've got more experience. You're a seasoned dentist. I'm still learning a lot. I'm younger relatively. How can one actually reflect on those values or emotional intelligence, as you said? Obviously they can come to learn from you. How you can, or how a newcomer can learn. Just at least start to scratch the surface of emotional intelligence. What exercises, rituals that you can tell them to get there?
Yeah, so it has been a long road of exploring a number of different areas. And so the gold standard would be a guy named Daniel Goleman, Goleman. So he wrote the book on emotional intelligence back in like the late 80s, early 90s. And he's got a couple books that are a bit of a tough read because they're very academic, but they teach you a lot. He talks about the 4 areas of emotional intelligence, the first of which is self-awareness and the importance of that. And then the second of which is self-management, which is then living your core values, really.
Right.
And
right,
so
right.
that's where I would say would be the best resource to really dig into the emotional intelligence world and learn it the right way. He even has stuff on leadership styles that are related to emotional intelligence and how to use them, when to use them. He's really got a plethora of information, probably 5 or 6 different books that you could get into across the board there, some of which are more academic, some of which are more a little easier on the eyes and brain. So I'd look up his name and see what trips your trigger for what you're wanting to learn. From an easier standpoint and kind of fun, there's something called the VIA character strengths. So this is similar. People have probably heard of Strengths Finder. It's been around a long time. There's even Strengths Finder 2.0 now. And that's kind of nice. But VIA, VIA, Character Strengths is a easy, free website you can go to and take this little 40 question test, and you get your character strengths. So this to me is really interesting and ties in with core values because their research shows that if you are living to where you are utilizing your strengths, you will be more fulfilled, you'll be happier, you'll be more interested and in life and in work and all this stuff. And if you're not, then you want to try to find things that will allow you to utilize your strengths.
Right.
So you go through that and you find that your top 5 character strengths, and they have definitions for each, and there's even books on how to maximize and whatever else. Some of it is a little fluffy, but the point being that you look at that stuff and you find your character strengths, and there's oftentimes a real overlap with core values. So I love that aspect of it and trying to tie those things together for people that are new to the world of core values, because everybody has done an online test, whether it's what kind of potato are you or what's your Star Trek character to whatever. This one is just a little bit more serious, but it's still fun. And you get your top 5 character strengths, and it allows you to kind of explore it in a fun way initially before getting into the heavier stuff of core values that require real deep introspection and stuff.
Got it. No, that's hard because I think when we are younger, for us, everybody is like, oh yeah, I want to do this. I know what I want to do. It's funny that we are talking about something on those lines. Wednesday, 2 days ago, I interviewed a TED speaker, Dr. Phil Borges, and he was an orthodontist. He got into photography. Of 18 years of working as an orthodontist, made good money in San Francisco, and got into photography, and then finally he produced a movie called Crazy Wise. So I think, and I had a very similar talk. How did you even figure out what made you fulfilled? I think we all, including me, get lost in what makes. I like dentistry. Don't get me wrong. I like dentistry. I like meeting people. Like that's the reason this podcast is in there to begin with. But somehow, at least that's what I'm alluding to, I don't know if it's fulfilling to me. Like I still feel a little void, for the lack of better term, and I think emotional intelligence or character thing you talked about might help in that regard.
I think it would. And so then to maybe completely confuse the situation, I just finished reading a book called Identity by Robert Fritz. And it really was like a punch in the face to some of the stuff that I've been proposing lately, because it says it really doesn't matter what you think about yourself. Like he says, self-esteem doesn't matter. What matters is doing what you want to do. So if you have a task that you want to complete, then figure out a way to complete that task. Don't put all of your self-worth on you doing that task. It's just a task.
Okay.
So he tries to take the self out of the equation. He talks about, like, Warren Buffett doesn't look at himself in the mirror every day and say, you're a good person or you're good at money. He just is. He just does it.
Right.
And he has a few other examples. So I think of that whenever you talk about what you just said, because it sounded to me like you were looking for dentistry to be a source of fulfillment. And so sometimes it can be, but again, that would be a lot of deeper exploring of what you're trying to get out of it.
Right.
So, for example, if you're looking for a connection with patients so that patients are saying, thank you, you're awesome, that kind of thing, there's a way to get there. If you're looking for the 10-year follow-up of the filling you did that looks amazing, then there's a way to get there. And if you're looking for every day to be something that you're just beaming and all that, then I'm going to say that we need to have a talk about what's realistic. And the fact that one issue we have now is this society of thinking that every day has to be blissful and unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
And that's not the case. Bad days are okay.
Right.
Feeling crappy one day is okay because, again, I'm going to reference an old book that I read a long time ago called Awareness by Anthony DeMello. I don't know if I'm saying that right. DeMaio. And he talks about how we have ups and downs, and we have to learn to appreciate the downs so that we can really appreciate the ups.
Highs. Yeah.
But if we're up all the time or trying to be up all the time, then we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Right.
So we're not wired that way. And so realizing that there are good days, average days, and great days, and fully experiencing each of those when they happen, giving yourself permission to have a crappy day.
Yes.
And then celebrating those great days.
Right.
And what ends up happening is it really mellows things out to where the crappy days all of a sudden aren't nearly as crap as they used to be.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But the great days are still pretty great.
Yeah.
And so then the way that gets into fulfillment then is it's that awareness of the world around you, and then your ability to say, okay, what is it that I want? What do I want to do for my patients or for my team or for myself or my family? And how can I best do that? Is it, providing amazing dentistry? Is it doing all emergency dentistry all day long? Or is it doing one case a day and just rebuilding somebody from start to finish?
Right.
Whatever it may be from a technical standpoint. Or is it the relationships you form? And what does it take then to step back and say, okay, I'm going to produce a little bit less, but I'm going to spend just an extra 5 minutes with every person that I see today, because that 5 minutes could have a huge impact on that person's experience here. And I mean, that kind of fulfillment, when patients leave, and they're probably not going to say it to you very often, but if they leave and your receptionist comes back and says, hey, so-and-so just left, and she had the biggest smile on her face. She said that the fact that you listened to her story made her day.
Right.
Like that's pretty powerful.
It is.
So I would say if you don't know that dentistry, quote unquote, is the right thing or fulfilling, then what is?
And for that, how do they allude to that, by just reflecting on, emotional intelligence, the character, what really makes you happy, what makes you excited, they should answer such questions. And literally reflect, sitting in the corner, switch off their phones, and I think that's the way that they should do it, right?
Yeah. So I would advocate for, if you can do it, then it's just introspection. It's, finding something that you can read that kind of provides some instruction, maybe about just things to think about to guide you there. You can do guided imagery, is kind of nice. It's sort of like guided meditation, except it's done for a strict purpose of promoting a creative thought process around what it is you want or desire or want to live your life like. And so there's free resources online. If you just Google guided imagery for creativity, for example, then you'll get some examples that come up. We actually do that so part of Inspero is also applied strategic planning.
Okay.
And so a huge part of that is doing a visioning retreat with the dentist and their significant other. And we spend a weekend talking about what they want of themselves, their relationship, their future, all that stuff. And we start that off with about a 10 or 15 minute guided imagery exercise where we just sit and close our eyes, and it's sort of like a meditation. You just listen and you walk through this creativity experience, and then we give them freedom to go and just think and write, and writing helps a ton. So if you do, like you just said, if you just go in the corner and think about things, bring a notepad with you so that you can make notes as thoughts come in your head. And that's the other thing. Don't beat yourself up. If thoughts don't come to your head in 10 minutes, then leave it and come back another time.
Okay.
And if thoughts are flowing, then don't stop yourself. Just write and as much as you want. Come back in the next day or a week later and read what you wrote. Yeah. And you'll find things really stand out as powerful. And so you go through and circle those. And from that, you can actually write yourself a vision statement.
Wow. This is interesting. It reminds me of my childhood days, to be honest. I used to write a lot. I used to just keep on writing and writing for an hour. I don't know what I'm writing, but whatever fuck is coming in my mind, I'm just jotting it down. And then, and I was doing it whenever I used to feel like, okay. So one exercise that I had was like, if today is like 13th December, I would go back 13th December 2018 or close to that date, a year ago, and see what was I doing at that time, and then that used to help me a lot, to be honest. Probably because of that, I think I'm in the US to begin with. Let's put it that way. Yeah. So, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing. That's huge. And obviously, if I remember correctly, at Inspero, you do have some course or, spending time with, at Inspero, on such a topic, right?
So, yes, correct. We have, it is a dedicated emotional intelligence workshop that is either 2 or 3 days long. And it does go through all that. It's really geared towards emotional intelligence in dentistry, but it does go through the 4 different domains of emotional intelligence. That's self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management. And then we spend some time on leadership, and then we spend time, most of the time, on how to utilize that form of communication with team members and patients.
Okay. So great. I try to put the link in there, a common link, so that people can actually go in there. While we're talking on such emotional stuff, let's go into a little bit of statistical curve thing. You said, on Twitter, if I remember correctly, you said, bell curve always wins. I thought that'll be interesting. Yes. And some guy who didn't know what a bell curve is probably asked you, what are you talking about? And you replied, bell curve. It was funny because we dentists and maybe other mathematicians or scientists, we all understand bell curve very commonly than the regular people. I'm just guessing. So what did you mean by bell curve always wins?
You have really done your research here. That's great. Okay, so there's a story there as well. So this goes back to some old days on Dental Town, and I was in a discussion with Phil on Dental Town. Those of you that are on Dental Town as regulars will know Phil, and we were arguing about some sort of statistical thing, and I think I had posted a polar plot of something. And he said, "What in the world is that? That doesn't make any sense." I said, "What do you mean? It's just a polar plot." And I tried to start to explain it. He said, "No, the bell curve is where it's at." And he posts a bell curve. And I was like, "Well, yeah, but that doesn't explain this situation." He's like, "No, the bell curve explains everything." And within like 2 weeks, there were I don't know, a handful of other examples where he was like, "See the bell curve? See the bell curve right here?" And he was right. And so ever since then, it's been a running joke between, I don't know, maybe half a dozen or a dozen of us that are kind of close from the old Dental Town days, that the bell curve is like the answer to everything. So, and it's almost a truth. You could almost hang your hat on it, because you look at anything and the results of any test, surveys, whatever, and it's going to fall in a bell curve. And so some things you want to be in the middle of that bell curve. Some things you want to be one end or the other, but it's all about the bell curve.
I understand. Now, obviously, after you elaborated, it makes more sense and it's funnier. It's not an inside joke anymore, I believe. So, but you don't belong into the bell curve. You are certainly at the, at the other ends, one of the other ends of the bell curve for sure. You have your weird hours.
One of the ends.
Yeah. You have weird hours to start, like 7:30 in the morning and 12:30, yes. Right? I mean, by 1, whatever. And you travel more, right? You still have lesser expenses and overheads now. You're growing 20%, which is great, I believe. And everybody would agree to that. It's huge. Not to mention you have awareness, which is hard. People are just going into the details of, get up in the morning, do some exercise, go to work, come back, walk your dog, eat, sleep, repeat. Mm-hmm. At least you're doing more than the regular dentists, I should say. I'm not demeaning anybody. I'm one of them, by the way. But I'm trying to say you certainly belong to one of the other ends of bell curve.
Thanks. Well, I think that there's an interesting point there that I think is worth having more discussions about in general, as well as right here. And that is that I have sort of created that because it's what I want. It's how I want to live my life. It's how I want to be. And I know when enough is enough. So there are, I think, way too many people that get sucked into always having to do more.
Right.
And always having to produce more, always having to make more, and then they spend more, and so they have to make even more. And there's this cycle of perpetual striving that isn't healthy in the end. And that's where we see a lot of problems. Now, that gets complicated when you look at the debt levels today of people coming out of school. And so, I mean, that's a whole nother difficult wrench in that equation of how do you manage that and still try to live the life you want to live, and that there are no real great answers there. But what I can advocate for is that as you decrease debt, you increase your ability to have freedom to do things the way you want to do them. And that creates a sense of peace, of pride, of comfort and stability, and things that all just end up making life better and easier.
That's really great. I mean, everybody should strive for that. And I think I really want to get there. But how did you arrive at this conclusion? I know it's not one day reflection or 1 month reflection. It's years and years. But if you remember any of the milestones over the period of last 18, 20 years that you've been practicing dentistry, and so on, would you be able to, if you remember, share the milestones? Oh, you know what? When this happened, I drifted more towards, I got more aware into getting into this line. Or were you already aware because of your upbringing, how your parents?
No, I would say I was really unaware going into dental school. Like I became a dentist because my mom told me I should look into orthodontics, and I thought that looked boring, but dentists could make really good money and they had more variety. So like, it wasn't some altruistic thing where I want to help people. It was like, there's variety and money, and that looks good to me.
Well, show me your essay. Show me your essay for your school. I'm sure it says altruism.
I bet it does. Yeah. I probably even said that during my interview if I really, So, but that's just the truth of it. And so then going into practice, I realized there were things I really liked doing though. Like I love surgery. Yeah. And so whenever I opened my practice from scratch, again, that was just like silly. It was like, hey, I want to do this and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it because I want to work in a place that makes me happy every day.
Right.
I don't want to go work in a dump. So I built that, and it could have easily failed, but it didn't. It was really pretty successful. But then my first real self-awareness about money anyway came when I got divorced, and the judge was sided with her instead of me. And so I had a big amount of money to pay, and I had no money because it was a new practice. I still had a lot of debt, and the judge didn't realize that.
Okay.
It's still a frustrating conversation to have about how silly that all was. But that's where I first said, okay, I can't be doing this for the money. I need to really look and see, okay, why am I doing this? What do I want to do? Do I want to do something different, or is this it? And I realized I really liked a lot of the things in dentistry. There were some things that were headaches, but they weren't that big of headaches. And there was a lot of room to rebound financially. So there were a number of years that were difficult and stressful and all that, but ultimately that was a big piece of learning. And then when I moved back to Illinois in 2010 was another big piece of saying, how do I define myself? Meaning, am I defined by where I live or the practice I have, or am I defined some other way? And it was around that time where I had to be me. I had to just say, okay, this is who I am, this is how I am, and therefore I'm going to have this kind of practice, I'm going to have this kind of friends, I'm not going to be somebody else.
How long it had been when you graduated from dental school in 2010?
10 years.
It's been 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm now 20 years. So June is my 20-year anniversary.
We should all celebrate then, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was your second milestone. So divorce, the second milestone at 2010.
Yeah. So then from there, it's really been a gradual uptick in learning and just constantly wanting to be a better human. So, doing fitness stuff because I love it, but also because it's good for you, and then advocating for that as well.
Sure.
In my practice, there's a lot of things I don't do correctly in my practice, but I do them, and I don't mean that I'm like doing shitty dentistry.
Yeah.
But
in business terms, Okay.
Yeah. So I could certainly be a better business person, but that would require me not doing things the way I want to do them. and I could have lower overhead, but then I'm going to be doing, again, it goes back to being clear about core values as well as what things are worthwhile to me.
Right.
And then making sure that fits within a necessary framework. So for example, I couldn't just go and do dentistry for free for very long.
Right.
Because
bills, yeah.
So there is a framework there. So then that gets to a quote I found. It's probably been 10 years, maybe even more than 10 years. I don't know. But it's by Kurt Vonnegut. And he's talking to somebody. He's at like a funeral. He's talking to a buddy, and he says, it's actually a poem, I think, that he wrote. It's called Joe Heller. And he basically says, hey, how does it feel to know that this guy made more in a day than what you're going to make in your whole life? The guy was a billionaire or something.
Okay.
And even Joe Heller, I think, was an author that made a lot of money off of some books. And the guy says, well, I've got him beat. He's like, what do you mean? How can you say that? He's like, well, I know when enough is enough.
Right.
And I loved that sentiment. I love that you can say, I don't care. After you reach a certain threshold of income or exercise or food or any of these things, you have to know when enough is enough.
Sure.
And so I feel like something that is somewhat unique about me right now is that I've found that. And I'm now trying to help other people find that, I guess you could say. But that's so powerful and, in my opinion, important. So it's not always easy for somebody that's young to do that.
Sure.
Because their world is clouded by debt and by other people that are making a lot of money or that are living a certain lifestyle, and they want to go along. They want to go hang out with their friends and go to dinners and all that kind of stuff. And so you run it, and really, a big part of it is money. Like that is a really overly dominant factor in this whole equation, and how that influences our choices. But at some point, you have to be able to say, I'm going to sacrifice something in order to be able to have a smile on my face.
Sure. No, that's great. No, I think it's hard. It's hard because we are, as you said, clouded by all the debts, and I have the student loan to pay. It's $15 already. I gotta pay for that. So you have to keep going through the process. I think Naval Ravikant, he's also one of those he's a great podcast. It's Netflix style podcast. Like basically he's already released all the episodes together. Naval, I'll send you the link. Great. And he says on one of those, podcasts, and he says that, it's better that I get what I want to get now, get all the money that I can get now so that I can help, whoever I want to help as much as I can, and I want to help.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting take. I had a really good conversation with someone just this summer that talked about a difficult decision they were getting ready to retire.
Okay.
And so they weren't sure if they wanted to fully retire, because that would mean they would then have limited money that they could use to donate to various causes. So they were thinking of working an extra few years so that they would have more money to help fund it was actually a clinic like in Uganda or something. And they wanted to be able to do that. So they were going to try to work extra to do that. I think it's an interesting take on what are you using your skills for? And, I find that interesting.
Great. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's deep. Now, I was also looking at your CEO, Ryan Coulon, right?
Yes.
Now, the way I understand is there are 2 or 3 people involved at Inspero. You, Ryan, and I think one of the other, Terry. I forgot the name. Don. I don't remember the name. So, what made you hire a CEO? Or is he not hired? Is a part of the... Okay.
Yeah, so that's also an interesting story. So,
thank you.
Bob Frazier had this business for 40 years where he did coaching, consulting, strategic planning, emotional intelligence. He teaches us new patient experience of how to bring new patients into an office in a very relationship-based way. And he does a wilderness adventure. Like, he was doing just things all over the map, and has been for a long time. Well, he retired in like 98 or 99, and so has just been doing this stuff for, 20 years?
Okay.
So he was looking, he's like 75 now. And so a few years ago, he was looking to replace himself.
Right.
And so I had a little conversation with him, and at the time, I was somewhat experienced, a newbie in the world of applied strategic planning, because I had done it with the AES. And Bob was the facilitator for that process. So I got to know the process, got to know Bob, and I really liked that. I kind of fell into it and was fairly good at it.
Okay.
And so really hit it off with Bob in that process. And so talked to him a little bit, but it was like, Bob, the only thing that you do that I would really have an affinity for is this strategic planning. Like, all the other stuff, we would need somebody else.
Yeah.
So he was also talking to some other people about things, and it just so happened that Ryan and Don were talking to Bob about taking over his business. And so Don was just getting ready to retire, and Ryan is quite young. Ryan's only like 36, something like that, and fairly new in practice, but doing quite well, and started off with all this training like right out of school. So even though he's only been in practice like 6 or 7 years, he's got 6 or 7 years of this kind of thinking and training and all that. So anyway, Ryan and Don were at an AES meeting, and we were all talking, and they were like, yeah, we're looking at Bob's business and not sure we can handle the whole thing. And I said, well, I'm interested in the strategic planning stuff. If you guys want a third person.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, we think we do.
Okay.
So that's where the 3 of us came together as partners to form Inspero. And essentially, I guess you could say, bought Bob's business.
Right.
And Bob is still an integral part of it. He's still heavily involved doing teaching and coaching and all that stuff, but is kind of also mentoring us for the different areas that we need mentored. So now me and Ryan and Dawn are the owners, and we just wanted to have a no-headed business, like no CEO, no president, just the 3 of us would be the partners, and that's how it would function.
Yeah.
But we found that can be chaotic, and people don't like not knowing who to go to
approach
for things. And to say the 3 of us was not very helpful. So after some conversation, Ryan is really kind of the visionary one of the group, and has the big ideas and really wants to like take over the world kind of stuff. Don is more of like a numbers guy, and I'm more like the critical thinker, I guess you could say. So we just kind of assigned roles based on some of that. And so Ryan was the CEO and president, and Don was going to be the CFO and COO, and I'm just like a senior VP or something. So it's really kind of meaningless letters there, because we don't really fulfill any of the normal things you would think of for those roles, other than Don. Don does do a ton for that CFO, COO kind of role with the organization. Yeah.
Got it. No, thank you. I thought it was a little different for, somebody to have a CEO so I'm glad you opened up that story.
Yeah.
People can connect to it, I'm sure. Now, you mentioned a phrase, critical thinking.
Yes.
And I think you were talking about it, if I'm not wrong, on Dental Town about it.
Yes.
Now, what are you trying to implement or trying to say by critical thinking? Especially in terms of role in dentistry, I know it's a whole course in itself, but just to get a tease, what do you mean by critical thinking?
Yeah. So I'm going to back up just a second and say, so critical thinking, like you just said, would be a course in itself on a college level. And so to try to just sum it up, it's having an ability to think through questions with little to no emotion. So trying to take emotion out of the equation when we're looking at something.
So stoicism in a way.
Yeah. Right? I think that would fit nicely.
Yeah.
And so that in dentistry fits because we have awful research to support most of what we do. And the good news about what we do is that at least we have plausibility behind the treatments.
Right.
So for example, if we're talking about a root canal and performing a root canal, there is plausibility behind removing stuff, cleaning it, and sealing it, and having it heal and be fine.
Right.
And even though we don't have great data on the best way to do that, we know that a number of different ways to get there could work.
Yes.
And so then we can argue about the details. Do you let the bleach sit for 90 seconds or 3 minutes? Do you instrument to an 04 or an 06 taper? Do you go half a millimeter short or do you go out the apex? Do you all that little stuff?
Right.
We can start to argue and we can look at the research and we find the research is garbage. And so we say, well, I'm going to do whatever works best for me today.
Right. Right.
So, critical thinking is being able to become unattached from any specific technique or procedure so that we can appropriately change course when needed or provide a treatment when needed for a specific patient. So I think of it ties in really well with evidence-based dentistry,
right.
Which is also could be a long conversation. So that is something that is somewhat near and dear to me because I think it's really important. And yet people don't understand it. As long as it's been around, there's just so many misconceptions. People think evidence-based dentistry is just doing what the evidence says. And that's not what it is.
Well, there is a big chunk of, in evidence-based dentistry, your own experience.
Exactly.
Which people don't, it's not a cookie cutter approach because, the root canal this way and that's it. No, you got to change it sometimes. The other day, I had this number 2 root canal I was doing.
Yep.
And the patient needed a root canal, of course. And then we went in and I couldn't see the mesial root. I knew it was something fishy there, but I continued working with it. And guess what? It was dilacerated. It was so much dilacerated that I had a U-bend kind of scenario. I couldn't finish it. I was like, listen, lady, I can keep going on for another 2 hours and I would barely get there with my, pro taper. I have to use hand files, but there's only so much I can do. I don't have a microscope. So you are better, taken care of by an endodontist who has a microscope. You got the idea. But also, it doesn't really go through pro taper all the time. Sometimes you got to use hand files, and that's where the experience and so-called evidence-based dentistry comes into picture.
That's right. You got it.
I have so many other questions pertaining to exercise, and you being, all over Instagram, there were only 2 pictures, either of your dogs or you running,
Yeah.
I know how to start this, but how did you get into being a health nut, if I have to use the word, so much into you're a triathlete. Come on. I can barely run to my office, but running, swimming, biking, all three, these are all tough things to do. And, I only know Dr. Bilal Saib, who's the triathlete too. I interviewed him, by the way, too. So that was a very fun conversation, but forget that. On the flip side, tell us your journey about, involved into, in this world of exercise, dieting, drinking.
Yeah. Dr. B is a great guy. I got to sit down with him at the ADA meeting 2 years ago, I think it was.
Yeah.
And in Atlanta, and it was great to meet him in person. So, anyway, on to the exercise thing has always been a part of my life from when I was a little kid running around the neighborhood to racing on the playground in grade school to track and football in high school.
Is it were you active naturally, I would say, or your mom and dad kind of pushed you? Hey, go.
No, they never pushed me. In fact, they tell stories about how if I was a kid these days, I would have been medicated. So there's a story that my grandpa told them that they should medicate me because I was always running around. We would fly down. My grandparents lived in Florida half the year, and so we would fly down there. And apparently, when I was little, I would just run up and down the aisle of the airplane when we were flying. Yeah. And my parents kind of just let me run wild, it sounds like. And so I've always just been really active and moving. And so for the longest time, there was no thought about it. It was just, these are the things that we do. We go run around. We go, like track and football were just the sports that we did. The group of friends I was with in college, I wasn't good enough to do those things in college. So I did the intramural sports and just real active with people in college that were also active. And that's what you did. On the weekends, we would go and play like touch football, or we would go sign up for something and just do a race or whatever. And it was probably in college, partway through college, that I would have gotten into running longer than just a sprint. So, and that was because of the girl I was dating, who was that first wife I told you about earlier.
Yeah.
But she was really into running, and so I kind of got into running because of that, and liked it. So running just got added to the mix. Cycling has always been a love of just getting out on the bike and going for an hour. I don't particularly like really long distance stuff.
Okay.
That's kind of another story, but the short to middle distance stuff has always been a fetish, so to speak, that I just liked doing, just liked moving. I liked sweating. And then I was also really active with just variation in college and through dental school. And then when I, moved in Colorado, I did a lot of skiing, snowboarding, just whatever was available. When I moved to Florida, that would have been 2005, I found a gym and they put on something called the Ultimate Athlete Contest. This was before CrossFit. This was 2 years before the first CrossFit competition.
Okay.
They had something called the Ultimate Athlete Competition, which was this weird series of events like running hurdles and then mountain biking and then pushing a truck and then carrying a farmer carry where you have big dumbbells you're carrying and a sandbag toss and all this stuff. And so I would do that and loved it. Just loved the variety and the just like getting dirty, and like when all those mud runs came out, the Warrior Dash and Tough Mudder and stuff, I loved them. Just loved the getting out and working hard and getting dirty. And so that it's always been there, it's built in somewhere. And so then maybe 15 years ago, 15 years ago, I started researching more about the benefits of that and reading about the importance of play, even for adults, and then the benefits of exercise, even a little bit of exercise, even a 20-minute walk per day has benefits for the brain.
Okay.
I mean, it is awesome what physical activity can do for us, for our brains and our bodies. And so it's just been in the last 10 to 15 years that I've really gotten into that and wanted to really advocate just move. Like, you don't have to go do what I'm doing.
Sure.
Because that was the thing. Like, every office that I've worked in or owned, the staff or team has thought that I'm crazy just because it's a little bit more than normal.
Yeah.
But I just love doing it. But now I say, you don't have to do what I'm doing. Just go do something. Just find something that you can enjoy moving.
How would you recommend for somebody, who's just starting, who's just busy in their dentistry, loans, C courses, walking dogs, amping up the business 20%, especially when they're working 9 to 5. If somebody has your schedule, I think they still have a lot of chance. I love that schedule, by the way. How would you recommend somebody who's into a regular 9 to 5 grind, for the lack of better term, to start something like that? Yeah.
So the best way for the most benefit would be in the morning.
Okay.
So and again, I don't have kids, so oftentimes my advice gets dismissed because I don't have kids.
Right.
And I can accept that. I appreciate that there are unique circumstances there.
Sure.
So if you have kids, then I would say wake up 10 minutes early.
Okay.
And either go for a walk if it's nice enough outside, or you have a treadmill, and walk at a pace that allows you to at least break a sweat.
Okay.
It only needs to be 10 minutes, and you just need to break a sweat. But that's it. If you don't have those circumstances and you're not a big fan of walking, then you could do the same thing. 10 minutes, do some air squats, do some lunges just in place, do some push-ups either from your knees or against a wall if you're just beginning or something like that. Just, again, all you're trying to do is break a sweat.
Okay.
So what that tells you, the reason I say break a sweat is because that tells you that you're getting your heart rate up high enough to have that real benefit.
Okay.
And so that 10 minutes, 5 days a week will have a profound influence on the rest of your day. So then we look at, so that's to start your day.
Okay.
And if that's all you did, I think there would be benefits. You might be a little bit tired the first week or two, but then it's going to be part of your routine and you're actually going to feel better. Then it's, what are you doing during the day?
Okay.
So between patients, for example, are you going and sitting down and typing at your computer, playing on Facebook or Dental Town and just sitting there?
Yeah.
And if you are, then do that less.
Okay.
Walk up and down your hallway. Do a couple air squats. If you're sitting for any more than 15 minutes straight, set a little timer. There's some online you can put on your computer. You could set your watch. You could a number of different things you could do for that timer. But once you hit 15 minutes, stand up, stretch, walk around for 1 to 2 minutes before you sit down again.
Okay.
Got it. Easy. Anybody can do that.
Sure.
Yeah. Those two little things will profoundly influence your energy level and your brain.
What about any supplements? Do you need to take any supplements at this stage, at the starting stage?
No.
How do you amp up from here? So let's say 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I did that. Take me as an example. I'm the perfect example to be started slow. So I did that. I'm doing two weeks. What after 2 weeks?
Yep. So
What would you
then I
recommend?
would, if you say, you know what, I'm maxing out my time.
Yeah.
I only have that 10 minutes, and then I have a little bit of time throughout my day between patients. I could do a little something
Sure.
like stand up, walk around, whatever. Then I would say you're gonna start increasing your intensity in that 10 minutes.
Okay.
So you're gonna walk for a minute, and then you're gonna jog for a minute,
Okay.
and then you're gonna walk for 2 minutes, and then jog for 1 minute, and just gradually increase the intensity to where, and you could spend months just working on that 10 minutes.
Okay.
Modifying intensity to where you went out and did just a minor warm up for a minute or two, and then went hard for 4 to 5 minutes. And then there are specifics. There are some things you can do to break that up, where you do 20 seconds really hard and then 10 seconds rest, 20 seconds really hard, 10 seconds rest. Some other little variations there that you could play with once you're feeling ready for it. That can also amp up the physiological response even in that short window of time.
Okay. Got it. So,
and even then, you don't need supplements.
You don't need supplements. Okay.
You're still not going long enough to need to do anything extra. You should actually don't consume more calories. Don't do anything extra other than maybe a little bit more water.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Now, what else? So that's the initial training. Even intermediate training, kind of, you mentioned you have 10 minutes, high intensity, run, take a break, run, take a break, whatever. Somebody who doesn't like running, and who likes to do a little weights, because I think it's pretty attractive. I'm lifting weights, right? I read James Clear. I don't know if you know James Clear from Atomic Habits. I read his blog post, and he really said one line which really kind of stuck with me was lifting weights or running down the stairs, coming up the stairs, running, is very, it's very objectively tells you if you are doing anything better. If you can lift 150 pounds, you can lift 150 pounds. There is no doubts about that. So it's a number. So I personally like to, as I said, I'm a fan of Tim Ferriss. I like to see if I have some sort of objective measurement that I can look up to, that I'm doing better than yesterday or last month or 3 months ago. What would you recommend for weights or anything on those lines?
Yeah. So depending on where you live and what the gym is like, I am a big fan of CrossFit.
Okay.
We do have a really kind of unique gym here in the number of coaches, the nutritional options they have, and things like that. But I feel like they do a great job of bringing you in at where you are and customizing every single day to what you can do.
What kind of gym is that? Like, what's the name of the gym?
It's a CrossFit gym.
Okay.
So in our town, it's called CrossFit Final Call.
Okay.
But there are thousands of CrossFit gyms around the country.
Okay.
And they're not, because they're all independently owned, it's sort of like a franchise. So, you never quite know what you're going to get in terms of the coaches that are there. But if they're following the methodology that is taught by CrossFit headquarters, then it'll be good for that beginner to get in, learn how to properly do Olympic movements, squat, deadlift, bench press, that kind of stuff with correct form.
Okay.
So that would be an important consideration. If you don't have one of those, then I would suggest at least starting out so that you learn how to do the movements correctly, to hire a personal trainer for at least a month to get an idea of proper technique. So once you have that, then you could set up a gym in your garage or your basement and work on weights, and then you're going to break it up by body part. So you might do chest and triceps on Monday, you might do back and biceps on Wednesday, and then do legs on Friday.
Got it.
And you could rotate that and keep a little log book so that there's a number of different ways to go about how to work through a progression to get stronger or to get better endurance. So you could use weights also for cardio. I mean, you could just put the bar on your back and try and do 100 squats.
Yeah.
You're going to be breathing really hard, even though that is a really, really light weight.
Yeah.
So on the opposite side of that, you can put on a whole bunch of weight and just do 1 rep.
Okay.
And So
I got the idea.
Yeah.
And how long do you think someone to be? I'm not saying to build up the muscles, 100-pound muscles, but somebody should be involved in a in a CrossFit gym. How long they should be part of a gym to reap the good benefits of a good healthy lifestyle? I know it's a very broad question. Depends on people. I'm only 5'3", 5'4". You're 6 feet probably, and it's different for every weight and so on.
Yeah, I'm 5'9", by the way. I would say 3 months would give you an appropriate exposure to enough things to know if you like it or what you like and what you don't like, and for you to experience the initial soreness that then goes away and you get to feel like you're getting fitter.
Okay.
Yeah. You can't judge it on, like, even the first month is tough because it's so variable.
Right.
You're doing so many new things that you're sore a lot. And so that first month is really challenging because you're constantly sore somewhere. Yeah. And so you're saying, wow, do I really want to do this? Am I really good at this? But then during month 2, you're like, hey, I did that exercise a month ago and I was sore for 3 days. This time I'm not hardly sore at all.
Yeah.
Like something's happening here.
Okay. Right. Got it. Yeah. I actually, I don't know did you know Peter Attia? Peter Attia?
Yeah.
Right. So I was listening to one of his latest podcasts, again with Tim Ferriss. I loved his concept of, doing everything at the age of 90, what I'm doing right now. Okay. Yeah. So there was I think the last 2 episodes, one of those 2, beautiful episode. I'll put it in the show notes. But the idea was that he said that I want to be able to do what I'm doing right now, like at the age of 90. It's easy for me to do what I do now because I'm younger. But his idea was if I can lift up 2 bags of grocery, climb 2 flights of stairs, or holding a baby, and obviously if I would be a grandfather, grandmother, whatever, at that stage, hopefully, then I should be making sure that I take care of the kid who's in my arm at that age 90. So, and I should be able to do what I'm doing right now how can I reverse engineer that amount of work at that stage at the age of 90, what I'm doing now, and how should I prepare myself at today? So
I think that's a good way to look at life. I think that's a really good way to approach what are you doing with yourself right now. And if your goal is to be able to be the fittest fittest 90-year-old you can be,
right,
then you're going to do things different today than you would if your goal was to be the fittest 50-year-old.
Sure. Right. You got to do more right now because you want to.
Yeah. It's fitness. It's nutrition. It's doing fitness in a way that is not destructive.
Exactly.
So there is a fine line there where you can certainly get into the extreme side of it. Sure. And really start to push. And like if I wanted to try to set a record for weight lifted by a 45-year-old next year, then I'm more likely to injure myself than I am to actually do that.
Right.
I'm actually not going to be helping myself later in life.
Yes,
but
certainly.
That's such a fascinating thing that gets back to critical thinking too. It's called I'm going to throw out a fun term for you. Sure. It's called hyperbolic reasoning. Did Peter Attia use that word?
Okay. No, not that day. That day.
I got him then. So hyperbolic reasoning, it's our inability to to see the long-term consequences of our actions.
Right now.
Basically.
Okay.
So yeah, it's why smokers don't quit smoking. It's why people that are obese don't necessarily stop eating. It's why people don't get fit. It's because we cannot understand and appreciate the 30-year consequences of our actions. And so we rationalize to, well, what do I want to do right now? And so, yeah, it's a fascinating world of how we think and why we think. And anyway, off topic, but
no.
Kind of related.
It is related. Now, we all love good food, right? But there's some food which is not good, right? Everybody knows that, but we still do it. How do we change that habit? Number one. Number two, what is your eating habit like? Number three, what are your recommendations to change your habit? How can we get into a good eating habits, and what?
Number one was good food versus bad food.
Yes.
Was that right?
Yes. Good food versus bad food. Number two,
my eating.
Your eating habits, obviously. Number three,
how to change.
And how to change.
Good versus bad, it depends.
Okay.
Now, you can almost start to say universally that ultra-processed food is not good for anybody.
All right.
Ultra-processed is a little bit of a finicky term. It would kind of be that middle, I think Michael Pollan calls it the middle aisles in the grocery store.
Okay.
So all the stuff that's in boxes and packages are typically the ultra processed foods. And so those are, for the most part, not good for you.
Okay.
And so then the stuff that is good for you is going to be your outside aisles and all the fruits and veggies.
Perimeter, right.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, with that said, there is so much variation, and I think we're going to see some really cool things in the next 10 years with more specific genetic typing for how we respond to food, and I'm really fascinated to see where it goes because I think that from the cravings we have to the foods and how we respond to them, why can two people eat similar things and one person gets high cholesterol and one person doesn't? Why, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
We don't necessarily know yet. We have some theories or hypotheses, but we're not sure. So it'll be really fascinating to see where that goes so that we can start to dial that in more and say, okay, after you take this genetic test, we know that you are going to put yourself at high risk for problems if you eat these things.
Right.
And so you should try and avoid those if you want to live the healthiest possible life. So with that said, I'm going to segue this into what I eat because right now I eat pretty much whatever I want.
Okay.
It's just that most of what I want is fairly good food. So I cook for myself. I eat veggies every day. I don't go and have McDonald's 3 times a day.
Fair enough.
So that's why I have to put like an asterisk there when I say I eat whatever I want.
Right. Because you eat good anyways, right?
What I want is mostly good, but I also have a thing of a little piece of chocolate almost every day, dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Almost every day.
Sure.
So there's sugar there, but there's also the dark chocolate health benefits, right?
Right.
I probably drink too much alcohol on weekends.
We're going to come back to it. I have good questions about that.
Good. A couple times a month. And so that is not good for long term, but I do it. So all that within the framework of knowing that I have my blood work tested regularly. I go see a physician. I know where my cholesterol is, my blood sugar, all these different things. And they're all within a range that is, you may not consider optimal, but it's considered healthy.
Got it.
So if I just want to be healthy, I'm good. Now, that gets into a tangent, which is, what if we want to optimize?
Right.
And this is a world that is really challenging because that's what is promoted. And all the stuff that I see in my news feed,
Sure.
it's a whole lot of like how to be optimal and how to use this supplement for that. And this food is a superfood for this and these different things. And most of that is bullshit.
I agree.
So that becomes real challenging. And the only thing you could do like hormone replacement therapy. So that has gotten big for men and women both, especially as we age and trying to keep that at a certain level. And there may be some real benefits to that for some people. There's just keeping good foods, well-rounded variety.
Give examples. Give examples of the good food.
So, one thing that happens with people that get into fitness is they end up being they get a rotation of food that is always the same.
Okay.
Rice and chicken and broccoli.
Right.
Sounds fairly healthy, but if you're having rice and chicken and broccoli every single day, you're actually missing out on quite a bit of potential nutrients from orange bell peppers and carrots and tomatoes and eggplant and just variety.
Okay.
So I try, because I do have my fallbacks as well. Like I have a salad, like a spinach salad that has bell peppers and tomatoes and some chicken and some crushed nuts and a little bit of olive oil and vinegar. Like that is a pretty standard salad that I have to force myself to mix it up sometimes and throw some cauliflower on there or throw, just mix it up for variety's sake. And that just keeps, because that's where we get all these micronutrients. If you've listened to Peter Addy, you've probably listened to Rhonda Patrick.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So she has an old podcast where she talks about the triage hypothesis for nutrients and disease. And this goes back to the guy that she trained with, Bruce Ames. And he has this triage theory that we can go a really long time being deficient in nutrients because our body will triage what we need and shuttle things to different places and sacrifice certain things.
Right.
At some point, we will then get a disease because of that sacrifice.
Exactly.
So it's a really fascinating theory that I think has some plausibility to it. And I would love to see them do more there, and they haven't in quite a while. But anyway, so now if you want to change.
What if somebody's eats eggs only but no meat?
Or a vegetarian kind of thing?
Yeah, that would be tough.
Yeah, so that is tougher, and it's certainly not my expertise.
Okay.
So somebody like Matt Standridge, do you know him? He's on
Ketodontist.
Yeah, the ketodontist. Yeah, exactly. He would be a really good person to talk to and get into really deep. He's got a couple different certifications of different nutrition camps.
Okay.
And he would be a great person to talk to about some variation there. The only thing I could say would be nuts and chickpeas.
Right. Yep. I do that.
So
nice. All right. So you were saying how to change the last topic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So number one would be to figure out what you want to change and why. So it gets back to core values and vision.
Yeah.
And so what is your purpose for doing this? And this goes back to that book Identity that I mentioned earlier as well.
Sure.
So take yourself out of it if you can and break it down into a project.
Okay.
So what is the bigger goal? If it's, let's say you want to lose 20 pounds.
Right.
And so the goal is ultimately, let's say it's a year. You want to lose 20 pounds in a year. Now we're going to break that down into micro goals.
Right.
So that's less than 2 pounds a month. That's less than a half a pound. It's like a quarter of a pound a week. Is that right?
Yeah.
No, that would be
half a pound a week.
Half a pound a week. So if we need to lose half a pound a week, that is like 100 calories less per day.
Cool. I like that.
If we can do that, then we just need to cut out 1 tablespoon of dressing.
Wow. Yep.
Like, so it's just little stuff like that. And so you can do that on a daily basis. And as long as you are tying that micro goal to the bigger goal and also saying, okay, what if you fail? A failure does not mean that you're a failure.
Right.
It means that you just didn't hit the goal that week.
Okay.
You have time.
Right.
If you get to the end, the other thing, I think it's really important to explore what happens if you succeed, what happens if you don't succeed. So let's say you get to the end of the year and you've lost 15 pounds, not 20.
Okay.
Okay. Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you pissed at yourself? Are you hating yourself? Or are you saying, wow, I just
lost
15 pounds in a year.
Which I wouldn't have lost anyways. Otherwise.
Yeah, that means that I'm 5 pounds closer to my ultimate goal.
Okay.
And I also did this over the course of a year. So it's not like I binged. It's not like I just did a starvation diet for a month and lost 10 pounds and said, yay me, and then coasted and started to gain it back. That to me tells me that it's a part of a lifestyle change. And that's ultimately what you have to do, is because as you lose weight, you have a new set point.
Yeah.
So if 3,000 calories has gotten you to where you're at now, and you've been steady for a while, and you drop down to 2,900 calories, at some point, 2,900 calories is going to put you here, not here.
Right.
You're going to have to then go to 2,800 calories.
Yeah.
And then once you get to here,
body adapts.
You're going to have to, exactly. And so I think it's called allostasis, actually. And that's another fascinating term that has a world of possibility to explore for different things. But that's a whole nother conversation. So that, to me, would be the way to approach that and look at it over the long term, not the short term.
Got it. Thank you. That helps a lot. That I think this is on a similar way Tim Ferriss says, and he says, keep your goal achievable. Start with the smallest achievable goal, and also on the same term, on the bonus structure, if we don't want to give our staff $75,000 of collection when we barely do 55 right now, it's not going to jump to 75. They're not going to work on it. They're not going to work on it. You tell them 58 or 60. Yeah. They might work on it. Yeah. Great. Now, I was actually very interested to talk about your whiskey, Highland Signature Vintage Whiskey.
Yeah. Okay. This one's more embarrassing to talk about, but I do like to drink.
Yeah.
I prefer my liquor on ice or neat. So I do appreciate a good vodka, just straight, tequila, whiskey, and all of those have their benefits in life. I also appreciate a really good beer.
Okay.
And have spent a lot of time tasting beer of different types, and my wife and I love to go to, when we travel, and we like to visit breweries and hang out in the little local microbreweries and see what they're like and what they're doing. And that's always a highlight of some of our trips. But the whiskey, to go back to that. So my affinity for whiskey started because of Dentaltown and Howard Goldstein, who hosts a little whiskey tasting in Chicago every February.
Okay.
And so going to that many years ago, 10 years ago, probably is the first time I went. Okay. And they set it up and they describe the whiskey in detail and give you a crash course on the distiller and what to taste for and all kinds of things about it. It was just fascinating to learn about the details.
Yeah.
And that makes it so much better.
Now, who are they here? Is it Howard Goldstein himself? Who's talking about the whiskey?
Nope, it's Brett. I don't know his last name. He's the whiskey buyer for Benny's.
Okay.
Benny's is like a huge liquor store chain. I think they're based in Chicago. Yeah, and he's their whiskey buyer. So we go to one of their shops in Chicago, and he does the talk. And yeah.
And how is Dr. Goldstein involved in this then?
He's just been buying from Brett at Benny's for like 20 years.
Okay.
And so after a couple years of buying from him, he said, "Hey, can we just do a tasting? And so I can see what you have available." And Howard would buy like bottles and bottles during that trip. And so it was worthwhile. So then Howard started inviting other people, and we've had as many as like 12 people there.
Cool.
And we all end up buying something. Like I would only buy one bottle, maybe two on a really I'm really splurging. But there were a couple of guys that would buy like 10 to 12 bottles.
Wow.
And then ship it home or bring it home. And yeah, just crazy what they get after there. But we taste some amazing stuff. So,
interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I have tons of questions which I can go on, but I think just for the time, I'll go on to final stages of questions, which are Tim Ferriss inspired questions now.
This is the lightning round.
It is kind of, yes, you could say that. The first is morning ritual. Any specific morning ritual that you may have that makes you Jason Luchtefeld?
No, it's nothing special. My alarm goes off. I go have a poop. I get most mornings. Then I get dressed for the gym.
Yep.
I go to the gym, have my workout. I come home, have my shake, walk my dogs, have some coffee, go to work.
Got it. Any meditation or anything on those lines?
No, I don't. I do advocate it, but I don't do it.
Anything specific with the shakes? When you have a shake in the morning, is it anything special? Workout, after workout, whatever?
Yeah, so it's almost always after the workout. And so it is kind of a protein-centered shake. I have played around with it in trying to do more of Rhonda Patrick's like super nutrient shake with like spinach and kale and all kinds of things in it. And it was too much, too gritty, and it was too big. Like it ended up being like 60 ounces or something.
Wow.
And I'd just be like bloated afterwards, and it was too much. So I just have my own little shake. It's frozen fruit, either blueberries or cherries, and milk, whole milk, or if I'm really feeling like frisky, chocolate milk.
Okay.
And then protein powder and a mix of flax and chia, some creatine. And if I have not put in chocolate milk, I will throw in some cocoa powder.
Okay.
And that's it. So
interesting.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
Tastes good. It's probably more carbs than I need, but I like it. Tastes good.
Did you say a protein powder too in there?
Yeah.
Oh, what kind?
Yeah.
Like any specific brand you like the most?
The brand I like right now is called ProMix. I get it off of Amazon. Okay. It's like a 5-pound tub for like $80. It's like the best deal going, and it's really, I think, a good. They have. I like to try different things. So the one I have right now is actually a vegan protein. So it has infused with B12.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit like you can tell that it's different. Like it doesn't mix quite as well. It's a little bit grainier.
Does it taste good? Does it taste well?
Well, I mean, I'm mixing it with so many other things that it tastes fine. Like if you were just to mix only that with milk, you would notice. You would know that you were just choking something down because you needed to. But to blend it in a shake like that, I don't really notice.
Okay. Got it. Next, the best purchase that you made between $100 to $300 that impacted your life in a positive way. 100 to 300.
Can I have two answers?
Sure.
So in my practice, I'm going to say it's my BioClear.
Oh,
I'm loving the BioClear. And I guess technically you could say it's in that price range depending on how many you buy. So that's for practice.
you mean the matrices? The
Yes,
BioClear
correct.
matrices. Okay.
Matrices, yeah.
Yeah.
And then for my home or life, it would be running shoes. I love shoes. So if I find a pair of shoes that I like, I'll almost sleep in them. It's so good. So
Now, what are those play shoes you're talking about? PLAE. Yeah. While you're talking about shoes.
Yeah, Play is just a brand that I kind of just stumbled upon and fell in love with what they stand for.
Okay.
Kind of who they are and what they stand for is good. They just seem like good people, a good brand.
Okay.
And so I got a couple pairs of their shoes, and so they fit great, they feel great. So then I got another pair. And so I have one pair that are for fun. I have one pair at work that I use just at work.
Okay.
And I have one pair I use for CrossFit. And now I just got a new pair in the other day, actually, for their Cyber Monday special, little pair of slip-ons.
Oh, cool.
So those are feeling pretty good right now. Wearing around the house, walking dogs. They're comfortable. So yeah, they're fun.
Did you order them online?
Yeah, so that's dangerous depending on what the return circumstances are. So this company is actually really good. If stuff doesn't fit, you can send it back.
Okay.
I had one pair of shoes that they have this weird latch for the shoestring.
Okay.
And I caught it on my laundry basket and it ripped off. And so I sent them a question and they said, send us some pictures. I sent them pictures. They sent me a new pair of shoes.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
They sent, I didn't have to pay even shipping. I was shocked.
Wow.
So that's cool.
And now what about those No Bulls?
Yeah.
Are they from the same company or something?
No. So No Bull is a newish company. I think they're less than 5 years old, and they're just in the CrossFit world. And so they have CrossFit shoes of different types and clothing and bags and all kinds of stuff. And so as I've gotten into CrossFit more, whenever you're doing Olympic lifting, so like squats and power cleans and these different lifts, having a specific kind of shoe is of benefit. And so that's that pair of shoes that I posted on Instagram.
You're right.
Is a pair of lifters, they're called. And that was a like splurge. That was like, I don't really need this, but I can afford fancy. One. Exactly. Yeah. And it makes me feel, you just feel stronger when you put those on. So I'm sure it's been a profound impact on my lifting.
Any specific book that you like the most, or you've gifted the most, or read the most number of times?
Yeah, this is so hard. I've always envied people that could say, this is my book. Like I give to everybody, recommend to everybody. And for me, it's been so circumstantial. It used to be a book called The Highest Goal by Michael Ray. He was a Stanford business instructor, and The Highest Goal was a book I read like 10 or 15 years ago that kind of was also integral in that journey of like self-exploration and stuff. And at the time I read it, it was so impactful that I just loved it. I came back to it a year ago and thought, I want to reread this. It's been a long time. I went through it. I hated it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, what is this? Like this is not, how did I like this before? I can't believe I like this much. And I don't know, that really shocked me. And so now it depends on who I'm talking to. So if it's a runner, there's an awesome book called Once a Runner, and it's fictional, but it's an awesome book if you are a runner.
Okay.
And if you are into more self-exploration and stuff like that, and you want to be challenged, this new book I just read called Identity was really good.
Okay.
Dawn GK from the stressful. The Peaceful Practice. She has a new podcast now with Alan on like stress and meditation and stuff. she sent me a book called De-Stressifying that was really good and just talks about things you can do to reduce your stress. And that was really impactful. So now it's contingent upon who I'm talking to and what they're looking for, or what our conversation involves, to what I would recommend.
Got it. I think you've mentioned a couple of books on the way, so I'm sure somebody will find interesting.
Yeah. There's a few back here.
Oh yeah, I saw.
That you could pick out and.
So don't you did you like hand a paperback or something like that, or do you like Audible?
Yeah. No, I love holding a book in my hands, and I like to smell it. I like to feel it. I like to draw in it and circle things and write notes. And yeah, I had that conversation with Toussaint Crawford. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. He's on Facebook groups that you've probably seen his name. Similar circles, but he talked about how he listened to it was, I don't know, 70 or 80 or 90 books in 2019.
Wow.
But he listens to all the books on 1.5 to 2x and listens to them all the time. And was like, I couldn't do that.
No, neither can I.
Well, so I get through maybe 10 books a year, and that's because I'm constantly underlining and taking notes. I might go look something up, or it sends me on a rabbit trail. And so I want the book. Yeah.
Got it.
My wife hates it. I have so many books everywhere. She's like, you have to stop buying books. I can't. Addiction.
Yeah. I think Seth Godin said it's like for $20 you get somebody's brain right in front of you. I think it's worth it. Any book, if it's $20, and even Ramit Sethi, I don't know if you know him, but Ramit Sethi said something similar. If you have only one, if you get only one nugget from that one book, it's worth it. It's $20. Yeah. Or cheaper, whatever.
I agree.
Anyways, when you think of a person being successful, who is the second person that comes to mind?
Yeah. So I would say the first I thought of was my dad, and the second was my wife.
Okay. Any particular reason?
Yeah. So my dad, because he was just a hard worker. I mean, he worked hard, lived his life, was happy with it, and set a good example for just kind of even keeled, neutral, roll with things, go with the flow.
Yeah.
So good in that regard. And then my wife, because she knew early, she's taught me a lot too, really, about understanding how you want your life to be and just living it. And she's done that since, she talks about when she was 13 and she decided that she wanted to do this or that. And so she would do it. And without even having to go through the whole self-exploration, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? She just is that way. She doesn't even have to think about it. And so she is successful at being her. She is herself, and there is no pretense. There is no acting. There is no putting on a show for other people.
Right.
She is just, what you see is what you get. And to me, that is successful.
Wow. Got it. What advice do you give to younger self?
Don't get married so soon. And understand more about business before getting into it. So that to me is, for example, in dentistry, I opened a practice understanding nothing about the business side of dentistry. Right. Just winged it because everyone said, well, dentistry succeeds. It's not like a restaurant. So just go open your door and you're going to be successful. And
right.
I stumbled along for so long with no real understanding of why things are a certain way, or how to run things, or how to be a boss and a leader and all that. So having a little bit of understanding about those different areas before going in head first, I think would have made a significant impact on my dollars and cents, as well as my stress levels at times.
Sure. Thank you for opening that. Could you name one of each, if possible? One thing that you're excited about right now. It could be anything in dentistry, life, your business, Inspero. One thing that you're excited about. One thing that you've changed your mind for. And one thing that you do that is absurd or funny.
Okay. Right now, I'm excited about what we are doing with Inspero, the group of people we have, and the information that we're sharing with people. I think has the opportunity to help dentists and other professionals reach a level of fulfillment and satisfaction with their lives that is really needed. So I'm really excited about being involved in that, having just one piece of involvement in that process. And even though it's impacting a very small number of people at a time, it is exciting to me, and it's something I love doing. So
sure.
I'm really excited about that and where that fits in the world right now. Change my mind would be, I'm going to come back. I think I've brought it up like 3 times now. This book, Identity. So I've been on for quite a while. I've been looking into, well, a year ago, I read a book called The Brave Athlete, Calm the Fuck Down by Simon Marshall.
Okay.
And it was really good. And it's about behavioral economics for triathletes, basically. But you can apply it to anybody. And so there's a whole chapter on how we perceive ourselves in the roles that we play. So how do you perceive yourself as a dentist, as a father, as a husband, as a grandfather, as an uncle, as a athlete, whatever it may be. So all your different roles. And do you perceive yourself as good or bad in those or whatnot? Next is self-esteem and what that looks like for yourself. And then the deepest level is self-worth. Are you worthy of feeling good or whatnot? And so he has different ways of coping with those things, some of which are easy little tips and tools, some of which are you need to go see a therapist and talk it out. So because of that, I was exploring this self-awareness because of the emotional intelligence, and then self-esteem because of his book and how important those things are, it seemed. And then I read this book called Identity that completely challenges all of that and says your self-esteem doesn't matter. Quit focusing on what you think of yourself and just go do something. Just get shit done. That's what you need to do. And guess what? As you start doing stuff, the side effect, you're actually going to start feeling better about yourself. But don't think that you need to have some grand self-esteem in order to be successful. Just go do something. So that was my take home from the book. There's a lot more to it than that, but that was a take home that it really challenged me and made me take a step back and say, what is important here? What do I want to share with people? How is this different for me now? Because again, this is more than you need to know, but like, I get nervous standing up in front of people and don't know that I have anything to share that is that much better than what anybody in the audience would have to share. Yet I'm going down this path of potentially lecturing and teaching at workshops and all this stuff. And so a bit of that imposter syndrome kind of thing. Right. So that this book actually helped me to say, you know what? Fuck that. Just go do it.
At least you're doing it. At least you're doing it, because if somebody who probably has more knowledge and then, I know more than what he said. Yeah, but he's got the balls to do it. He's got the balls to bring you here and be exposed and be vulnerable to 10, 20, 30 dentists in the room. Right. That's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. So, and that's how you grow is you have to go. And after I read The Brave Athlete book, I contacted the author. And you can actually do like sessions with him. So I did an hour session with him talking through some of this stuff. And was like, and talked about self-esteem and talked about this imposter. And he was like, look, nothing I can say is going to change that. There is no thing you can go read. There is no magic wand. He's like, you need to go out there and do something and have a failure and rebound from it. You need to go and have a success and realize that it was the work you put in that helped to lead to that success. And as you do that, the imposter syndrome will go away and you're going to feel better and better about it. But there is no magic formula. It's experience. Wow. So go get experience.
Great. So, no, that's really great. I think that's deep.
Too.
That's deep.
Yep. Okay. Absurd or funny. So this goes back to whenever I was doing a lot of triathlons, my wife and I, we had a van that we bought and we used for a while to drive around the triathlons, or whenever we would go, we'd sign up for like a trail run. For example, we're doing one in Costa Rica in February. Okay. It's a six-day adventure trail run thing. So when we do these, I always initially look at it and oh, that looks really fun. But then the first thing I think every time is, where am I going to have my morning poop? Because if that doesn't happen, my day's ruined. Yeah. So I scope that out. I literally research where we're going to be to make sure that morning poop can happen, because that is what the world revolves around there. Yes. So there you go.
Thank you for sharing all that funny stuff. It was really good. Thank you for sharing all that.
That's great. Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah, thanks for the invite and the good conversation.
Would you like to get a really small email a couple times a month to see what #POD is up to? What are we reading? What are we listening to? What are we doing? What's stupid, funny, entertaining, and weird stuff that we gotten ourselves into? Then go to podcastofdentistry.com/extra. EXTRA. That's right. podcastofdentistry.com/extra. And you will get a really small email from us to give you that little extra kick and keep you busy exploring the world we travel. You can also find us on Facebook at podcastofdentistry.com/Facebook. Thank you for listening. #POD. And I'll see you inside.